podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Ed, well, as somebody pointed out in the NQAT pod Instagram DMs, can't really think of a time this season where we've had to record a show after 2 losses on the bounce. Now, that's partly because for a lot of the season we did a show after every game, 2 shows a week, so that's partly why. But also, United just haven't lost 2 games on the bounce very often this season, but through a combination of rotation and exhaustion and fixture congestion and other words that end with shun, Man United lost to Leicester and Liverpool.
Not since the first games 5 and 6 of the Premier League did United lose 2 in a row, I think. So lost 3 of the first 6 and then lost to Sheffield United in December, January. And that's it in the league until these 2.
Yeah.
And then there was probably 2 losses with a league and a Euro game somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Maybe.
Very, very weird games, these 2, for different reasons. I mean, Leicester, hard to have any analysis about that one. United were well beaten, even though it was 2-1. Didn't create anything really apart from Mason's goal, which was, nice pass inside by Ahmad and brilliantly finished by Mason. So he led the line. He was the number 9 there, learning from Edison, who's staying on for another year. And it was probably his best game at number 9, I thought. So he was okay. But the rest of it was like a mix of old guys and young guys, wasn't it?
I like the fact that was given as the first goal assisted by a teenager and scored by a teenager in Premier League history. And it's like, I mean, assist does a lot of heavy lifting. As JJ Ball pointed out on the TIFO podcast, Mason Greenwood beat 5 players to score that goal. I mean, he didn't dribble past 5 players, but he did take 5 players out of the game in total. But Ahmad did pass the ball to him, so there we go. Mason Greenwood, United's top scoring teenager ever, which I don't know if we talked about that last week, but I just find that statistic absolutely mind-blowing.
Yes, top goal-scoring teenager in the Premier League. Is that overall in... is that better than George Best?
Much less mind-blowing. Yeah, right, there you go.
I actually don't know the answer. I'm putting it out there because I suspect he's not. I know, football only started in 1992 for certain folks. But anyway, yeah, whatever. It's a great number for Mason, and he's having a really good second half of the season. Hard first half, but he's really coming strong now, and it's looking good for the Europa. I mean, it'd be interesting Europa final. Who's going to make that front 4? Because I suspect Mason's going to be on the bench.
He shouldn't be. He absolutely shouldn't be. On form, he should be in the tight side ahead of Rashford, assuming that he plays McFred, which I actually don't think is quite the foregone conclusion it has been for a long period of time, because I have to confess that I didn't see any of the Leicester game apart from the Mason Greenwood goal. I haven't even seen Leicester's goals because I couldn't face it because I was working while that was on, and then I barely finished work when the Liverpool game kicked off, and I didn't have time to get ready to see that game, but I did see quite a lot of the second half of that. And oh my God, Fred, you've done it again. Like he did the full Fred, give the ball to the other team so they can score a goal. He's done that, I think, 3 full times this season. He's created, I mean, I'm sure that his XG created directly for opposition is probably higher than his XG directly created for Man United.
Oh, I mean, sure. I guess it's a thing not recorded, so error leading to goal, but it has to be direct and not a couple of phases afterwards. But yeah, look, it was the Leicester game. It's, as I said, hard to do much analysis of that one just because 10 changes, such a weird lineup. No one really did themselves any major favours. Some pretty poor defending for the Leicester goal, or very good first Leicester goal. Then Liverpool, every single one of them, the 4 Liverpool goals, is a catastrophic error. Every single one.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I saw a lot of commentary afterwards about, how it wouldn't have been like this with Harry Maguire in the side, but none of them were actually the central defenders. We spent a season banging on about how bad United central defenders are. And it wasn't on the central defenders. I mean, not that I'm saying that Lindelof and Bailly had awesome games or anything, because actually I thought sort of Bailly was pretty messy in the first phase of that game. But what do we get? Liverpool's first goal, Wan-Bissaka didn't step out. Really simple, that one. And I don't know what commentary you had over there, but for me, they were going on about what a ball it was. But it's like, that's just one to the back stick. It's really simple to defend that one. So, big mistake there. Second one, Pogba gives away the stupid free kick. Just didn't need to. Looked like he was frustrated and just chops the guy down and then doesn't track him. It's his zone and doesn't track him.
Absolutely.
And then the third one, you were talking about, Fred, like the straight ball back. How many times has he done that? Just the straight ball back to put someone in trouble. And it's just because he's just so... he just wants to get rid of the ball as soon as possible because he's just not comfortable. He's the least technical Brazilian I've ever seen, and that includes Kleberson. It's just, it was so bad. And then Shaw lost the ball. It was uncharacteristic for him. He tries to dribble out, gets himself in trouble when he probably should have launched it. And then Matic gives away a really soft ball. You could just see it coming as well with Matic. He's like, oh no, I'm in trouble. I'm just going to give it away. And that's the break. And then Dean Henderson, for some reason, steps miles over to his left and just like, put it in there. And Mo Salah was like, yeah, all right.
They were saying on I can't remember, on some football podcast I listened to, might have been Tifo again, actually, that for a second it looked like he's doing something really clever. Like, is he trying to show him the space so he can then make a great... No, so this is just a goal. I mean, listen, even if he'd got his angle spot on, Mo Salah's pretty good forward, isn't he? So you're expecting a goal one way or another, but don't give him the entirety of the goal to aim at. I mean, United went 1-0 up and then 2-1 down and then 2-2. Is that right? No, they were 3-1 down, weren't they?
Yeah.
They got it back to 3-2 and really did look on top for a period of time. Looked dangerous. Thought something might happen. There was the moment where Greenwood kind of really like a very dangerous kind of goalmouth scrambly type thing, and the Liverpool defender cleared the ball off the line. But to try and do any kind of reasonable analysis about these two games feels really hard. I mean, we had just a very brief conversation about it before and then sort of decided to save it to have the conversation on the show. But for me, like, obviously, it's bad that United lose. It's a shame that we couldn't put a dent in Liverpool's title chances, but not title, Champions League qualification chances. We did by letting Leicester win. We did half the job, but didn't follow it up. I sort of, we'll talk a little bit about protests and stuff. I mean, I kind of slightly jokingly predicted that the game wouldn't go ahead, mostly to get out of making the prediction that I kind of felt like I would have had to if I was being honest, which is a Liverpool win because they needed it more than United need it. And when you've got two teams who are reasonably well matched across the board, sort of both teams with strengths and weaknesses, in the end, it makes a massive difference if you desperately need the win or if you can coast.
Look, that would explain the difference in intensity. Liverpool were more intense, I mean, certainly with their pressing, which United just couldn't cope with. I mean, it doesn't really matter who's in the side for United. We just cannot cope with the press. I mean, I saw some analysis of Harry Maguire's passing. But whether it's central defenders or especially the double pivot in midfield, just not comfortable in possession. Just trying to play out for the back, whether it's from the keeper in the short kick or in the transition, it just gets us in trouble so often. And that was the thing that caused a lot of trouble for United in terms of the flow of the game against Liverpool. So there's certainly some intensity there. United's defensive actions per phase of play or whatever it's called has been dropping off in recent weeks, and that's a good indication that they're knackered. And even with the 10 changes, it's just been back to back to back. There hasn't been a full week off. Once this season, right? So they're certainly tired. and that showed in that game in terms of its intensity. But the biggest difference, I mean, if United had just conceded possession and defended well, might have got something out of this game. But as it was, just horrendous defensive errors. I mean, I think we're at 42 goals conceded now. We'll see where we get to by the end of the season, but it's going to be one of the worst in the last decade, basically. You're
so annoyed.
You're like
so annoyed after.
You hate this analysis. I know. I mean, and it's freaky because it's 6 against Tottenham and 4 against Liverpool. But
I only hate it because we had a massive discussion about it last week, with a kind of interesting counterpoint, and then they conceded 6 goals since then, and now all my arguments are totally moot. Because
I mean, your arguments weren't bad. I mean, they weren't bad in terms of the relative performance of that stage. I just think United make too many errors, and a third of the goals United have conceded in the Premier League this season are from set pieces. I mean, it's just the basics there, man to man or zonal, or a hybrid of the two. But who is picking up who? And 2 goals this week, Pogba and who was the other one? Rashford, I think, just didn't pick up their dudes at the back post. It's so basic. And in the game against Liverpool, Solskjaer made 2 substitutions at a Liverpool corner. I mean, man, maybe it's just like a trope that's totally out of date and there's no data to support this, but the idea that you don't change who's going to be marking who at the set piece, and you get through the set piece and then make the change has been long established.
Yes, my whole life. That's always been. That's like a fact. I have no idea.
Yeah, as I say, it may not be supported at all, but it also it kind of makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? If everyone knows who's picking up everyone, and at a free kick they then don't pick anyone up. So anyway, a lot of that feels like it needs to be worked on, but also a lot of it are individual errors all the time. Whether it's anyone in that back six, well, it's the central defenders and McFred that make a lot of those individual errors. And that feels like that's the thing. I don't know whether it can be coached better. Solskjaer haven't been working with these guys for 2 years now.
But if you've got Lindelof, Maguire, Fred and McTominay starting huge numbers of games next season, something's gone really wrong this summer. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It might well happen, but it means that we've got the summer wrong, because that is the thing that has to change in the personnel to make United get closer. Because let's have a little conversation about Maguire. So obviously, I mean, inevitably, loads of the commentary about United's defensive sloppiness in this game was focused around the absence of Harry Maguire and how much United missed Maguire. And I think, having criticised Maguire plenty on this show this season, I think there's a very substantial amount of that which is perfectly accurate. And actually, he is clearly an organiser and his presence does make a difference. But the idea that United don't make calamitous defensive errors when Harry Maguire's in the side, or aren't absolutely shocking from set pieces. There's a statistic you just mentioned, most of those games, because Harry Maguire plays, this is the first game he's missed in the Premier League since he signed, which is impressive in lots of ways and kind of amazing, and shouldn't be a negative about Maguire by any stretch of the imagination, because having a central defender who plays all the time is great. I think it's a bit too easy to say United's defence was terrible because Maguire wasn't there. Although part of what happened was United's defence was terrible because Maguire wasn't there. Not least of which because he plays every game, right? So it's a bit like the change from... We saw it when the keeper changed from De Gea to Henderson. We saw the way the defence sort of thought about the game had to slightly change because they're so used to dropping deep to cover up for the fact that De Gea never comes off his line. And they've actually started to... there's a messy sentence, but they've started to stop doing that. They're doing that less now. And so I do think there's... Some of it was about the fact that this very kind of solid partnership, not solid in quality, but solid in consistency of appearance, was changed. And so there was a kind of defence, by which I include McFred, that kind of defensive network was disrupted by that. I do think that's fair, albeit Maguire's a mess a lot of the time too. Yeah,
sure. Yes. I mean, it's that's probably fair, though. Analyse each of the 4 goals, and it's hard to say that Maguire being in there would have stopped it. Maybe at the free kick, maybe he'd have done better there. Henderson, we should mention too, because one bounced off his chest, and the other he got himself horribly in the wrong position. You know, United are going to ask themselves a question about goalkeepers this summer. Romero's off, Grant is off, I think. So that's freeing up some space on the wage bill. I assume Pereira will be leaving too because he's 24 and he's out of contract. They are looking for a third goalkeeper. A lot of talk about Sam Johnson coming from West Brom, as long as West Brom don't ask too much money, or, you know, Tom Heaton maybe.
Wow.
So,
Sam Johnson's not old, though.
He's not old. It seems unlikely that they'll spend like 20 million on a third choice keeper. This is for the third spot.
Why would he take that gig? Like, he can get a better gig than that. He's a good keeper. Yeah. He's not like elite, but he's better than a third. He's not Scott Carson, is he?
No. Play for City this week. So we'll see what happens there. But the number one and the number two are a problem. One, Henderson is showing some inexperience at times. I think it's fair to say that. He's got many qualities, but he's not perfect. De Gea, we know, he's made quite a lot of mistakes. I mean, the first time I've been going through our archive, cleaning it up for various reasons. First time I mentioned it in a headline was at the World Cup in Russia, but I'm sure he was making mistakes before that. So it's a long decline with De Gea. We know the problems there, and then the other one's the money. You know, this is nearly 400 grand a week worth of wage bill, and it's a hell of a lot. It makes a difference in terms of what United do, and also whether United can offload De Gea, because otherwise we're going to have this sort of issue next season. I mean, it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is pace in central defence and a proper central defensive midfielder, but we talked about that. We've talked about that so often. It's so bloody obvious, as you say, if that's not fixed by September or August. Something has gone catastrophically wrong, which of course we know quite probably will happen, and United will spend 200 million on Harry Kane because the Glazers think that will stop the protests.
Yes, absolutely. They're not. I don't. Yeah, they're not going to do that.
Tongue firmly in cheek in that one. I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. It's like, no, they're not. They're not going to do that. Not now they've re-signed Cavani. That would be genuinely out of their tree. The Henderson De Gea thing is fascinating, and it's a bit like a new manager in a way, where a lot of when I say a new manager, I mean either a kind of relative like Ole, like a relatively inexperienced manager, or Arteta at Arsenal, and they're going to make mistakes. They've been sort of fundamentally over promoted in the sense that they've never managed a club on the scale that they're currently managing, and the question just is how much over promoted are they? Are you seeing enough? Moyes' first season, like, it was so evident that it didn't matter what was to come. It could only go one way. A young goalkeeper's like that. It's about, because young goalkeepers make mistakes. I mean, you mentioned that's the first time we pointed out a De Gea error, but he made lots of mistakes when he started at the club. He was kind of extremely shaky, and Fergie put Anders Lindegaard in goal a lot. It's Henderson having made a number of mistakes, I don't think is like, oh, that means United need to get a new goalkeeper. I know you're not saying that. I'm just saying lots of people are saying that. And I just don't think we know yet. But like with a manager, that is a high risk gamble.
Very much. Yeah, very much, because a De Gea is best was what was it, 7 or 8 points he won for United in one of perhaps his best season. So, it's a big decision, but there are bigger problems or challenges for the club to resolve in the summer. A summer that may well be Ed Woodward not in charge and not leading the recruitment drive. A big one for Murtagh, the new director of football, I guess, to make sure that recruitment happens.
United's goals were all nice this week. Scored a lot of nice goals. Now, my kind of feeling about this is that these games kind of don't matter because fourth's locked up. If we lose against Fulham and we lose against Wolves, I might feel differently about that. But I think given the 3 games in 5 days or 6 days or whatever it was, No, it was Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, right? So given a Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday schedule, to win one of those three, I think is decent. And to win the first one, so you guarantee Champions League football, I think is decent. And the Leicester game, they had to do the massive rotation because that was the one where the exhaustion really would have killed them, given that they played on the Sunday. And then just the combination of intensity and concentration, because intensity includes concentration, right? It's not just physical intensity, and concentration was really the missing ingredient against Liverpool. Maybe they'll focus their minds. They've had, they'll have had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 full days in between games, absolute luxury. And then they play Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, which is a schedule they're much more used to. So, I think so long as we beat Fulham, then,
yeah, I mean,
that's week off.
Fulham will guarantee second. And I do think, I know maybe it doesn't matter, and like for the club's finances and stuff like that, it's like just getting in the top 4. That's the trophy, Arsene Wenger trophy, getting in the top 4. But United have been the best of the rest for most of the season. There's also a benchmark against last season, finished with 66 points last season. 2 wins against Fulham and Wolves would take us to 76 points. 10 points.
Can we just say take 2 points off that, Ed, because we're going to draw with Wolverhampton Wanderers it's Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yes. Look, two games that doesn't mean much for anyone, I suppose. So we'll see what happens and whether there's some more rotation against Wolves, because there could be. So Fulham victory, guarantee second, and then he's got some flexibility. But losing also might become a habit. Lost against Roma, lost against Leicester, lost against Liverpool. Going to these next 2, losing, then it might be an issue in the final. Look, I think United lose 4 of the last 5 or something like that before the 2017 Europa final, when he just kind of gave up on the league and gambled everything on winning the Europa League, which in the end turned out all right. But I kind of suspect this Villarreal side are better than that Ajax side, who weren't the polished full Ajax team that got to the semi-final sort of a couple of years later. So very, very young Ajax side with De Ligt and Davinson Sanchez, 18 and 19 in the central defence. And in that one-off game, Mourinho sent Marouane Fellaini, sort of up front to bully those two, and played it long all game. Very ugly final. So that kind of gamble works, and I would hate to be going into this game having lost 4 or 5 games. And you kind of, because it could happen. Like
I know, but like it's the the assumption of the negative there is very heavy, because we lost to Leicester. I mean, the Roma game was a complete freak game, and he took both fullbacks off at half time, which was when it really started to go wrong. Leicester and Liverpool are 2 of the better sides in the league. Fulham and Wolves are not.
Yes.
So I'm not saying we are going to win both of these games. In fact, I think we're going to win one of them and draw one of them. But I don't necessarily think it's just because the last 3 games have been like they are, that means we're going into Villarreal. Oh, we're never going to beat these because we've taken
It's not really what I'm saying, but
I know
5% either way can make a big difference, can't it? So
yeah, and next week we'll have this conversation, and it will have gone one of 2 ways. Yeah. And I think if we lose both of these, I think these games do actually matter a little bit more than the Leicester and Liverpool games. I think those games. I think it was a massive, massive, massive ask for United to win either of those games, and a ridiculous ask to expect them to win both, given the nature of the fixtures and the quality of the opposition, basically. So,
and of course, the bigger downside is that we've contributed heartily to Liverpool maybe getting back into the Champions League, including a ridiculous 95th minute goal against West Brom today. I guess we'll talk about that in more detail in the backers content. But the goalkeeper powering in a header 5 minutes into injury time after West Brom had a perfectly good goal chalked off as well. Anyway, we'll get back to that in the season review and see whether our joy at Liverpool's demise this season was somewhat early.
I mean, we'll see, right? Because there's games left. I mean, I know that City have got to play. I mean, Chelsea have got to play City on the last day of the season, which is going to be massive. But that game is going to be. No, that can't be true. They just played them. No. They play Leicester at home, and then they
Leicester
play Villa
this week. Yeah, then Villa. I mean, what we really need is Leicester to win that game.
Yeah,
and then Chelsea to beat Villa, and then Liverpool will be out the Champions League. So. No matter what they do.
Liverpool are only a point behind Chelsea with the same number of games, right? So if Leicester win, then Liverpool would be 2 points ahead of Chelsea.
Somehow I thought Chelsea had more space.
No, and Liverpool are playing Burnley and Palace. No, I didn't realise that Leicester were playing Chelsea. That's disastrous. What are we doing? Absolutely shocking. No, I take it all back. We should have won that game. Terrible behaviour. Anyway, we'll talk about Leicester and Chelsea playing each other on the backers content too, obviously, because their FA Cup was quite the scenes. Talking of quite the scenes outside of Old Trafford before this game and during it, there were significant protests. The attempt to stop the game, and this is the worst case scenario, really, that the game went ahead and United lost. That's both of those things are sort of fundamentally bad in a way, I think. The attempts to. I thought it was always going to be a massive long shot that there was going to be any chance that they would have successfully stopped this game, given that they'd done that before and the amount of kind of alert that the authorities would be on would have been so high. We saw the ridiculous extent to which they've fortressitized Old Trafford. They've militarized Old Trafford.
Better, yeah.
Better, an actual word.
Huge steel walls and barricades, just so much.
Our home form's been terrible this season, so we may have said, at some point, God, I've got to make Old Trafford a fortress again. Not literally. That's a metaphor. They've really got that wrong. I mean, I saw you put on social media, this is rebuilding trust, is it? And it's like, yeah, they're not rebuilding trust. They're rebuilding fortifications. It's
apparently
ugly.
It's cost United over £1 million for the extra security operation for these last few games of the season. I don't even know. Are fans definitely coming back for that Fulham game? Because
the ballots happened, and there's loads of people rowing with each other about whether you're supposed to go, which is nature is healing.
Of course, yeah, yeah. So that'll be fun. So there will be 10,000 United fans there. Will the ballot be fixed to make sure they're not the type that might get on the pitch and chain themselves to the goal?
Anyone with FC United shares is not getting lucky in that ballot, are they?
Talking of which, the amount that the security operation was all smoke and mirrors. Apart from the big steel walls, they had fake buses, fake Liverpool United buses going around town. And then sort of blacked out non-branded buses actually carrying the players. They had and also smoke and mirrors. They had the United spokesperson giving an interview. I don't know whether you've seen this one. 2 minutes of the biggest pile of steaming horse. Every single word, Charlie Brooks, that came out of his mouth was a lie. Every single one, utter bullshit. It started with the owners really care about this club. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Ed. I just wanted to just very briefly point out, it's very funny that they're talking about rebuilding trust with the fans. You'd think that a single United fan might have been able to name the director of communications if there was any trust with the bit that pre-existed. This is the first time I've ever seen or heard of this game, and I don't know if you know this, Ed, but I follow Manchester United quite closely for professional reasons, semi-professional reasons. This is definitely semi-pro level, isn't it?
I mean, look, the guy's had a good career. He spent years at Nike in Oregon at HQ there. He's I don't know whether he's a United fan or not, but for some reason he's taken the job at United, and just resign, mate. Have some dignity, and just you don't need it. You can get a job anywhere. You'll be all right. Your career will be okay. You don't need to embarrass yourself like this.
But isn't corporate communications mostly about lying to people about what the corporation's intentions are? Isn't that generally the vibe?
I don't think so, actually. I mean, I think actually there's, especially in the last few years, there's been a lot of effort by big corporations to try and be more authentic. Now, some of it comes out really fake.
It's so funny, isn't it?
But
it's such a funny concept.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there is a feeling that, especially among younger folks, that does matter. It does matter, and people can see through the bullshit. We're all pretty attuned to media. We consume a lot of it, and we can smell through the crap. Smell through the crap, see through the whatever. It was just so bad. It was just so bad. I mean, it was Chemical Alley going, look, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah, it's really out of order. And also out of order is that making that poor poodle be in front of the bus in a rickshaw for nothing. Like, just... By the way, like, if you haven't followed this story closely, that sentence is going to sound like I've suddenly had a stroke mid-episode, but that was actually a thing that happened. While footage was being taken by journalists of a fake Liverpool bus being penned in by parked cars. Suddenly this lad and his partner presumably rolls along in a bike with a rickshaw in the front with a little dog in the front of it, which was by far the best moment of the entire evening, as far as I was concerned. It was it was a shame that these protests didn't achieve the task of getting the game off, but there was a decent attendance, and there's clearly going to be, the next time there's another big organised protest, which I'm sure won't be very long. The next time they play, well, I guess it'll be next season, but the next time they play a game at Old Trafford in the daytime, I'm sure there's going to be a very significant protest again.
We'll see. I mean, in the past, it's always fizzled out for one reason or another. And I think the fact that there's trial balloon stories floating around sports pages that United are going to try and get some kind of trophy signing may well be the thing that has flipped. I mean, hey, if nothing, I suppose, I hope you can hear the sarcasm in my voice here, maybe it will change the Glazers' plans this summer, because I was pretty certain that after the Super League collapse that the plan was, and like there wasn't any plan to spend money before that there would have been a plan to spend nothing, basically, because their golden egg had been snatched away. Now maybe they feel like they've got to buy off supporters.
That's what happened in 2010, isn't it? The protests in 2010 essentially made them not take a dividend out that year. So, it's had these like little short-term impacts. But I just, the idea that Joel Glazer's going around claiming, the director of communications is saying this on his behalf, that they care about the club. I mean, I think there is an argument to say that out of all the Glazer family, Joel Glazer is at least the one who knows Bruno Fernandes's name. But like the idea that this group of owners, you talk about not knowing their names. I don't even know the name of, the third brother and the sister. I don't know their names.
Joel, Avram, who, by the way, we're committed to rebuilding trust with the fans, but I won't talk to anyone. I'll run away from reporters. Darcy,
absolutely.
Edward, Brian, there's 6 of them. Joel, Avram, Edward, I think I'm right in that saying. Brian, Darcy, can't remember them all.
Good night, John boy. I don't know. They're not the Waltons. They're very non-Walton-y in ethics. But anyway, it's just all just gross lies and nonsense. It's really upsetting. And here we go. We have some tangible evidence that it's all just gross lies and nonsense, because maybe the single best hire at Man United between this person and Bruno Fernandes for single best incoming in the last, 3 or 4 years, Casey Stoney's leaving. Now, if you are running your team so badly that you chase off a generational talent, clearly someone who has achieved absolutely remarkable things already, who's got United well ahead of schedule in terms of the development of the women's team. They wouldn't have been expecting to push for a Champions League place this season. I know it's dropped off in the second half of the season, but maybe that's not such a surprise when you hear how shoddily the club appear to have behaved when it comes to the conditions provided for the women's team in terms of training and things like that.
So Casey Stoney signed out today with a defeat in the FA Cup Women's FA Cup 5th round to Leicester. A bit of a shock, that one. Obviously, United are superior normally to the Leicester women's side. It has been a bit of a downhill slide in the second half, precipitated by a lot of injuries. Kristen Press, Tobin Heath, Leah Galton, probably the 3 best players, all out for significant parts of the second half of the season. And Casey Stoney will go away, leave the club. We'll talk about why she appears to be leaving the club, but she'll leave the club having, built this side from scratch and produced a very good side. Best of the rest after City, Chelsea and Arsenal. And that's, sort of no mean treat in 3 years. She's learnt on the job as well. There has been criticism of her performance as a manager. She's young. She's trying to manage a thin squad with a lot of injuries and up against 3 sort of giants of the women's game. And so I think a lot of that is understandable and had to do it on a slim budget. And now it appears, and some of these stories appeared before, but we've had a lot of details now, obviously, I assume coming out of the Stoney camp, about just how bad the conditions were for the women's team. This is supposedly one of the biggest clubs in the world, making their, and caveats for COVID reasons, but making one of their leading teams changing porta cabins with no toilets on a training facility which appears to have been prioritised after the men's team, the men's under 23s and the men's under 18s, and then the women's team get the scraps. It's everything that many of the leading players in the women's game have been campaigning against. The poor treatment, relative poor treatment of the women's game, and the penny pinching funding that appears to be going into this from the club. I guess shocked, not shocked. At every level of this club, the Glazers have neglected the men's team, or neglected to put in the right kind of structures to be successful, neglected Old Trafford, neglected Carrington. The only thing they neglected the women's team, neglected the academy for a long time until very recently. The only thing they didn't neglect was to take dividends out every year and make sure they get sponsors. But even there, scraping the bottom of the barrel, and Z-list sponsors now. So, and Z-list sponsors that are running away. Anyway,
absolutely
God,
extraordinary.
It's just disgusting, all of the stories, honestly.
Yeah, this one is particularly offensive in a way because so much PR went into the, oh, look at us, aren't we right on and doing the right thing by the women's team, and the women are all at the kit launch and it's, equal footing and all that kind of stuff. And they really tried to sell that story, but they didn't back that story up with action. And the almost, I even hate saying this because it shouldn't be this way, but it would be such a cheap win as well. You could get this win accurately, do this right, for such low impact on the bottom line, because the numbers are minuscule compared to what you would have to do to move the needle in the men's game. So really, and you said Casey Stoney's had some criticism, and she has, but she's had a lot more praise than she's had criticism, hasn't she? Yeah. And rightly so. And the idea, if it's true that she's walking away because of the way United are treating their women's team, that is your chickens coming right home to roost, isn't it? That's that's something that no men's team manager, for all Jose Mourinho's devoted acolytes that believe that his actions were a long form protest against the Glazer ownership. None of the men's team managers have ever had the kind of bottle to say we're walking away because because
very much opposite to that. Very much opposite to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Mourinho moaned about not getting the money he wanted to, but then he didn't.
He does that everywhere.
He does that everywhere, and then he just stunk the place out. So, if it was a protest by Mourinho, it was a dirty protest.
Yeah, which is
anyway. Look, the bottom line is, look, the fact that these stories have come out very soon after it was announced that Casey Stoney is leaving, with the sort of announcement on United.com, and then she hasn't turned around immediately and denied any of this. I think there's a lot, there's so much smoke here. We can assume there's some fire. And as I said, some of these stories did come out before about the standards. And look, the only caveat, they moved away from the Cliff as their training base because COVID and bubbles and stuff like that. But then to not even to
Put
be
some
able to
money into
put
it.
some money into getting the right facility for them. Jesus Christ.
Especially, and again, this is what I was kind of just saying, that this is the bit I hate saying, especially given the optics. Like, you do that to the under 23s and people go, oh, God, you cheapskates. That's not much good. But you do that to the women's team and you're undermining the whole idea that you care in any way about this stuff that people should actually care about, because women's football is extraordinarily important. Like, this is the thing. It's not like its existence at a high level matters very, very deeply to lots and lots of people, including every single little girl watching Man United. Like, it's such an obvious point, but that's 50% of the children watching Man United getting the message that, like, oh, well, for years they got the message that there's no such thing as growing up and playing for Man United, which was even more despicable. But now it's like, even if you do grow up, beat the odds, play for Man United, you're going to change in a porter cabin when the men's team, COVID or no COVID, the men's team weren't changing any porter cabins, were they? So yeah. Anyway,
Right.
Shame, real shame.
Yeah.
And like, shame on them, kind of thing.
Shame on them. Edward should walk through the streets of Manchester naked, having stuff thrown at him. I mean, I'd say Joel Glazer, but they never come to Old Trafford, so they haven't been in Manchester for forever. Honestly, just so disgusting. So much of the way this club is run. And just to change tack slightly, but it's related, I think. I mean, you see the celebrations after Leicester won the FA Cup yesterday.
Yeah.
And the owners involved, and not in some kind of US sports, I want to grab hold of the trophy and lift it myself way, but the manager and the players wanted him there. And, the sense, or maybe it's more optics than I know, I don't know, but the sense that owner, manager, players and fans are all as one, pointing in the same direction at that club. And it just feels like a really well-run club. And they're at a third of the budget of United. I just, honestly, it's just, wouldn't be that hard, would it, for our owners to do the right thing? But they refuse all the time. And, and I hate to say it, but the reason why the women's team is neglected, even though the budgets in women's football are tiny. There's in theory a salary cap, or it's a kind of budget cap. Yeah, in theory, I say, because it wouldn't work with Chelsea spending 400,000 on Pernille Harder to bring her in, or in fact United paying apparently like orders of magnitude more for Heath and Press in terms of their wages. So anyway, it's just not that much money to do this right. It's the annual budget is probably 2 months of David De Gea's wages, something like that.
Yeah. Grim, really, really grim, and it's things like this that are the reasons why United's ownership matters. Like, I get that people probably there are probably people who really don't enjoy the discourse around the ownership around Man United, because they kind of just, supporting United is about enjoying the football on the pitch and And obviously, like, the owners have a bearing on the football on the pitch, clearly. But it's just like, it means so much if the club stands for something. If the institution stands for something. You mentioned Leicester, that's a really good example. Like, Leicester fans, there's a group of fans that I've got like a sort of, they're not quite Stoke City, right? But they're Stoke City adjacent for me, just because every time I've ever heard them at Old Trafford, it's just endless. All the classic small time stuff, just like Leicester, your city is blue, all that. That was the season they were winning the league. And you're like, what are you doing? You're winning the league, you idiots. Like, this is not going to happen to you again. Enjoy it. Anyway, but even with all that said, I had tears in my eyes at the end of that game. And this was partly because there were fans celebrating, which we'll talk about a bit more on the backers content, but was incredible just in and of itself. But just seeing them all pull together, them all kind of standing for something, believing in something and achieving it, if you're not thinking holistically about this stuff, if you're not thinking that the kind of the culture really matters, and that you can say all you want about Ole kind of doing a tremendous job kind of addressing the culture of the team, the first team, which he clearly has. The culture of the club is rotten in spite of loads of people who are incredibly dedicated to the culture of Man United, who work at Man United, who must be like hating what they see from the owners and must be endlessly frustrated by the way budgets are, constrained and pennies are pinched and all that kind of stuff. It would be very, very, very nice to have an ownership model which had fans' interests at the heart of it.
It would. And that's what the protest's all about, despite what Graham Souness says. Anyway, should we take a quick break and then we can talk about football in the week to come, or next few days, or however many days I did like, honestly.
And
all blends
Alex
into
Ferguson.
one. And Alex Ferguson's
I want to talk a bit about Alex Ferguson. So, the one really nice thing, I'm really excited about this Fergie film. I think it's going to be very interesting and apparently quite a sort of, an extremely personal take. It's a film directed by his son, and I'm fascinated to see it from the kind of the human angle. But one of the best things about it coming out is Fergie's been everywhere. There's an 18-minute interview, which you can see if you're in the UK or have VPN options on iPlayer. Alex Ferguson, it's called like Alex Ferguson and Family, Football and Family. And then a brilliant interview with him and Jason Ferguson by Donald McRae in The Guardian. So it's just been a lot of Fergie chat and, him talking about his recovery from his brain hemorrhage and some very moving stuff around, the sacrifice that his family made for him to have the success that he's had. Very, very interesting. Lots of praise for Marcus Rashford's social agenda, and especially he kind of drew attention to the fact that as well as the kind of remarkable stuff that Rashford's achieved off the pitch, he's retained the same kind of down-to-earth attitude on the pitch, which I think is very
in that BBC interview he calls out Rashford and said he called him straight away, and he talks about his activism, Fergie's personal activism, organising a players' strike at one point, and his dad was...
An apprentices' strike in the dock workers, for the dock workers.
It's going to be a fascinating film. Obviously, it's going to be a bit hagiographic, I think, directed by his son. It'll be wonderful to relive the great moments. Apparently, it builds up to the 99 final as its... sort of denouement. So
hell of a it's really useful if you're making a documentary about something United related. It's a hell of a denouement to have. They did it with the Class of '92 film as well, didn't they? It's like just ideal.
You can't stick it in the middle, can you?
No, but like if you're going to have a real life sporting denouement, you'd be absolutely buzzing to have that to work with if you were a filmmaker, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Look, unsurprisingly, I don't think it's going to touch on any of the more difficult aspects of Ferguson's time at United. He has refused to take questions about the ownership. He wasn't going to talk about the Super League. I think is it in that McRae piece or the Dan Romer's
piece?
Dan Romer was talking about it on Twitter as well, saying what was in and what was out, and he's sort of very he frames the question about the Super League in terms of the Champions League and what it means to him. So he got sort of partial answer, which was basically the idea. It was a terrible idea. But he's not going to cover fan protests. He never has in all his years working under the Glazers. He won't even address it, which, like, in the context of praise for Marcus Rashford's social action and talking about the apprentices' strike, he's obviously... He talks about being open, honest, and reflecting on a career, right? So there's some introspection there. He's not blind to what's happening, and he's not blind to why supporters are angry with the owners. He just doesn't want to talk about it. He just won't. And I don't know the answer why, because at one stage I'd have said, well, he's on the payroll, but he's not. So I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he is in a way, he has a kind of very deep loyal streak in a way, although that was clearly somewhat one way with some of his players. If they didn't fit the bill of what he believed they should do for him. But there's... so I think it's partly that kind of, he said it in his book, didn't he? Is that terrible 2013 book that, he was much better remunerated after the Glazers came along. It was the only time he ever felt like he was getting the kind of level of pay that he deserved for the job that he was doing. And that probably went a long way with him. Just not, I don't even mean it in a particularly greedy way, just in an ego way, to feel like you were being paid what you were worth to the club. I think they weren't paying him enough, like in terms of what he was actually worth. In
terms of what he made for them.
Yeah. But I don't know, there's enough money in football to pay Ferguson what he's worth as a football manager. So I think maybe it's partly that. And maybe it's partly wanting a relatively quiet life. And maybe it's partly not wanting to open the door of his own culpability in the whole shoddy story.
Yeah. I think all of that is probably fair analysis. But it is a big hole in this. And I guess that's for other people to discuss and analyse, because I'm let's hope he lives very many more years. But when he is, when he finally goes to his grave, I doubt he will ever address this. But
yeah. And you know what? Like, nobody's perfect, right? This is the good outweighs the bad considerably in terms of his impact on Manchester United, right? That's, and his abilities as a manager, and his kind of his greatness within the field of sport. He's he's the all-time great football manager in the history of the sport. So yeah.
Alrighty, not a lot to say about two games coming up. We sort of mentioned them. Fulham on Tuesday. I presume it's going to be a fairly strong side.
It's going to, this is full whack both games, right? Maybe if the kind of league situation or whatever it might be is wrapped up by the Wolves game, like you said, we're guaranteed second if we beat Fulham.
I think that's right. I don't think anyone can get to 60. Let's. I'm just going to look at the league table.
So we've got points. 7.
Yeah. Leicester can't get to more than 72. So
great. So if we win against Fulham, then I imagine he'll do the absolute maximum rotation he can. He'll go full Mourinho against Palace when he really could play all the kids. That was the game that. No, I don't think that was the game that Angel Gomez came on. It was the game that a young lad whose name completely escapes me scored right near the beginning of the game against Palace. Paul Pogba played 45 minutes in that game.
Can't remember. Not at the club anymore. Anyway,
no.
Most of the players aren't. So, I'm sure be a mega rotation against Wolves if he can. And then we'll talk before the Villarreal game, right? So
yeah, of course we will, yeah.
All building up to that. I guess the focus entirely on in terms of their training periodization, how much load they're going to get will be on that. Harry Maguire won't play in either of these games coming up. Ankle ligament damage. The chance of him playing against Villarreal, I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
You can't have a half fit central defender against. I mean, Villarreal,
Moreno
not
up front,
a bad side,
top quality striker.
So I mean, we'll talk more about that closer to the time. But I'm going to say that we're definitely going to see Rashford and Fernandes, who are the kind of the key rotation figures in the side. We're going to see them and Luke Shaw and Paul Pogba in this game.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I hope he doesn't play McFred. I hope he tries to play Pogba and either one of them, much of a muchness. I hope he tries to do that in both of these games to try and build some kind of understanding in the midfield, so he can play Pogba, Greenwood, Rashford, Fernandes, and Cavani.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked, but you never know.
It's so bad. It's so dumb and bad because
it's compromises all over the place. Yeah.
They don't add stability. They add sometimes they add stability. They're either going to add stability or at least one goal to the opposition. Those are your two choices. I know it's not like playing Pogba in deep lying positions doesn't have its own problematic aspects, because of course it does. He was massively responsible for one of those 3 goals. It was as bad as what Fred did almost, to commit a completely unnecessary foul and then ignore your man. That's really, really poor. But anyway. I'd like to see a progressive midfield in both of these games with a view to trying it against Villarreal. That's my dream scenario. But
dream,
I'm sure you're right.
I don't think it'll happen. I think what we'll get is Pogba on the left in the final. This is my guess right now. Cavani's up front.
Yeah,
if he's fit, it's definitely going to happen. Pogba left, Rashford right. Not a good position for Marcus Rashford. This one.
Why wouldn't you play the player who's good there instead of the player who's not so good there?
Yes, because he's not going to leave Rashford out, because he can do, as he did against Liverpool. He scored a great goal.
Yeah.
And so the choice is to do what you're saying, which is play Pogba deeper. And he doesn't trust his central defenders, and he doesn't trust his midfield.
But I'm saying if you don't play Pogba deeper, you leave Rashford out and play Greenwood and bring Rashford on. Bring Rashford on the left late in the game. Not late in the game, but,
I don't think
half
any
an
of
hour
that's
to go.
happened. I think we know what's going to happen. Anyway, we'll do a proper preview after the Wolves game. See if we have any indicators at all.
Hey, I just wanted to say I got an extremely nice message from a chap called Anthony Phillips. I want to shout him out for a lovely message, and thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's continued to support the show and has continued to listen as we've sort of descended into repetitious, boring nonsense as the football's descended into. And it's been, I can't wait to do the season review show, because it's been such a wacky season. It's had some real highs and a few proper lows and an awful lot of weirdly turgid middle. There's been a lot of that, and I have to say we'll talk about it more for Patreon backers in just a minute, but watching that FA Cup final, all I want for next season is for it to be the right thing to do, to have significant numbers of fans in those stadiums, because that big banner that says football without the fans is nothing. In some ways, particularly in the early phases of the pandemic, when Premier League first returned, it was such a tonic to have just something to do and some sort of, entertainment and something new, and not being watching old games, and, all of that was really nice. But football without fans is nothing. It feels so pointless so much of the time. So here's hoping for significant numbers of fans next season.
All right, well, we'll be back after the Fulham and Wolves games, and have a great week, everyone.
Yeah, take care of yourselves.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.